A memory of primary school. Debbie was the kind of kid my parents would tell me to avoid. Of course, as a defiant 11-year-old, I wasn't in the habit of doing as I was told. I wasn't exactly a social butterfly, and Debbie had been shunned by the popular kids ever since she'd been found out, so it was only a matter of time until we became partners in isolation and, eventually, friends. Debbie had joined the school after Christmas, and it was a while before anyone noticed something wrong. In a room full of 11-year-old disaster children, things were bound to go missing every once in a while. It was only when Irene Winter's gaudy pencil case, contents and all, was found crammed into the top of a certain student's bag that anyone thought to question Debbie's ever-growing repertoire of stationery. I still remember her grin as she read out the apology a teacher had written for her. Empty words to match her pencil case. It was a month or so after this that Debbie and I idled away an afternoon by the river, failing to skip stones and searching the water for the fish my parents promised were there. What is it that makes her hate me so much? Debbie was complaining. This referred to Irene Winters, the girl whose entire pencil case had found its way into Debbie's possession and who maintained that a single red pencil had never been returned. Probably your personality, I deadpanned, only half joking. Why must you wound me so? Moaned Debbie, collapsing backward into the grass with a hand to her heart. I rolled my eyes, suppressing a grin. Her flamboyant air always reminded me of a peacock, though on this day it may just have been her attire. She wore a frankly ridiculous skirt, all tulle and sequins that she must have borrowed from her mother, as it was about a foot longer than it should have been, so it trailed behind her like a chartreuse wedding train. Right then it was bunched up at her knees, revealing a pair of tattered, muddy trainers that were wholly at odds with the rest of her outfit. Noticing my gaze, she pulled the skirt down over her shoes, perhaps a little more flushed than warranted by the summer weather. In a bid to avoid eye contact, she glanced into the river before perking up and staring into the water intently. There's something weird looking down there. That's just your reflection. Oh, I'm so hurt, she said absently, preoccupied with reaching into the water towards a glint of silver lodged between two rocks. Before I could even call out, she was shoved from behind and fell into the water with a resounding splash. Behind her on the bank, Irene Winters rose to her full, rather diminutive height, her mouth curling into a satisfied smile, though she fidgeted uneasily. Moments later, Debbie emerged from the water, spluttering more with indignation than suffocation. You idiot! Now my beautiful skirt's all wet, Debbie gasped. Irene folded her arms and scoffed. You're so full of yourself. At least I'm not full of. Before she could finish her sentence, a lot of things happened at once. Guessing that she was about to say something she'd regret, I cut in with a protest. Making the same deduction, Irene lunged at her, fists flying. Debbie, with a cry of shock, reflexively shoved Irene into the river. Frozen with indecision, I peered into the water. It took slightly longer for Irene to struggle out of the weak current. Irene knelt on the riverbank, coughing and bedraggled, and her face began to turn a blotchy shade of purple. She took a deep breath, and I cringed, expecting curses or yells. Irene bawled. The rest of the day was a blur of glares, tellings off, and quite unnecessary shouting, throughout which, for all her bravado, Debbie was silent. There are only two things that I remember with any semblance of clarity. Firstly, that Debbie was finally expelled from the school for her many misdemeanours. Second was a conversation that I had with Debbie after things had calmed down. She had changed clothes, no gaudy skirt anymore, but a pair of jeans ripped from use rather than for fashion. From the pocket of those jeans, she drew the small silver coin she'd found in the riverbed. That's 5 pence, I said flatly. But think of the possibilities, she exclaimed, before whispering dramatically, 5 penny sweets. I laughed, but the gift didn't sit right with me. My mind kept going to an empty pencil case filled with contraband, tattered shoes covered with a lurid skirt, and her excitement as she had found the money. I handed it back to her. Keep it. That's the end of the story. Now, obviously, you can see at the bottom it says 24 plus 16. Now, this story is actually a story written by a student at this school a few years ago. And what that 24 plus 16 means, it means that in their actual GCSE exam, they got 24 out of 24 for story writing, and they got 16 out of 16 for spelling, punctuation, and grammar. That is a grade 9 story.